Danger Zone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready for another week of live radio with me, your host, Kev Baker, right here on the Kev Baker Show? What a weekend it has been. We've had North Korea, Little Kim, he's been at it again. Hurricane Irma, it is picking up speed as we speak. Lots of AI news as well. And of course, to get into all of this with me tonight is my good friend, and I'm so proud I'm able to say that. He's also a host on the network here as well. Author, researcher, the brilliant Anthony Patch. He is live here with us tonight. You can find his work and his books and details about the upcoming Full Spectrum Dominance Conference over on his website, www.anthonypatch.com. And I want to take this chance before we get going tonight, again, just to remind all of you out there how brilliant you are. And without you lot out there, I mean, it just wouldn't be worth my time or any of the hosts' time turning up to provide and present the information that we do. So never, ever forget just how much myself and Anthony and Johnny Whistles, who'll be with us later, we truly do love all of you out there. And even the people who don't agree with us, you know, that's how we all grow and learn together. You know, before we get going tonight, if you are living in the UK today, what an absolute nightmare. Forget Hurricane Harvey, forget Hurricane Irma, forget the fact we're on the verge of World War III with North Korea, because Kate Middleton, she's only gone and got pregnant again. That's right, a third reptilian royal baby on the way. And, you know, I can talk about this and I can criticise it, right? Because this is going to be the latest royal parasite to be sucking off the teat of the British people. That's right, my tax money, your tax money out there, that will go to giving this child an absolutely amazing life that not one of us will ever get to experience. But that's my royal rant out the way. And yes, my new name for Kate Middleton is Kate Middlefinger. Deal with it. Tony, welcome to the show, man. I've got that little rant off my chest now. I hate the royal family over here, and that's why I'm so glad you're with me tonight, or I could probably see me abusing that horrible reptilian family for 2 hours, and the people don't need to hear that, Tony. How are you doing?
Well, you can do that tomorrow. Tonight, we're doing DARPA dollars.
DARPA dollars, and we were having a laugh before the show, and DARPA dollars will become more obvious as the show progresses. But Anthony, you've had a wild weekend, and I've been watching these storms that are gathering as well. We've had Hurricane Harvey. Now we've got this Hurricane Irma. Now our good mutual friend, Mr. Scotty Lopez, he has been doing an absolutely amazing job of covering all the storm kind of news. And the reason I say it's amazing is because what Scott's doing is he's sticking to the facts. He's looking at the tracks. He's looking at the data. And he's not giving any of the kind of usual conspiratorial side that I'll add on to things. He's just telling people how it is, telling people to prepare, where it's coming, and what to do, that sort of thing. So to kick tonight's show off, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play Scott's latest video. Now, it's only 5 minutes long, but that'll give me and Anthony a really good starting point where I can get Tony's thoughts on this latest storm, Hurricane Irma, which is heading for the US as we speak. So take a listen to this.
And this is my daily update on Hurricane Irma. We've had a change in the track here that has me a lot more concerned for Florida, and we will get into that here in just a second, but let's kind of see what is currently going on with the storm. It is still a Category 3 hurricane with winds of 120 mile an hour. It is 560 miles east of the Leeward Islands. It is moving west-southwest at 14 mile an hour, and it has a pressure of 944 millibars. Because of this, we now have hurricane warnings for the Leeward Islands. We have hurricane watches for Puerto Rico, the British Virgin Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. If we take a look at the GOES floater imagery here, we can see that the storm looks healthy. There's plenty of convection around the eye. It has been going through eye replacement cycles, and it will continue to strengthen as it heads into warmer water. Here are the sea surface temperatures currently, and as you can see around the Bahamas, we have sea surface temperatures approaching 30 degrees Celsius, so there is plenty of fuel for this storm to work with as it continues to move to the west. We're now going to look at the storm tracks here, and you will see why I am a lot more concerned about Florida. This is the GFS ensemble, and basically each one of those lines is a separate computer simulation. And as you can see, there's a big change from yesterday. We now have the storm possibly maybe even hitting northern Cuba, but it is definitely tracking more towards Florida. And the GFS has been pushing this thing farther west each time it has updated. The official GFS track takes all of these separate computer simulations and basically finds an average between them all. And that is where you get an official GFS track. So if we go to the GFS simulation here, we can push this forward and see that Irma tracks really, really close to Cuba, and then it makes a northern turn and hits southern Florida. So this is a lot more concerning to me, because if you remember the video yesterday, the GFS had Irma right off the coast of Florida and curving up into the Carolinas. Now it appears Florida may be taking the brunt of this. Now, the GFS is showing it emerging back over the water, possibly off the coast of Florida, and we could have a second landfall in Georgia and South Carolina. So, once again, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even North Carolina, you're still not out of this. Even if you don't get the eye of the storm, you are going to get, you're basically on the dirty side of the storm. You're going to get the flooding. You're definitely going to get some wind. You're going to get maybe even some storm surge. And it looks pretty bad for the southeastern United States. So
now, if you want to keep up to date with Scotty's daily updates on this, you can find them over at Facebook, and he's also going to be joining us live here on Thursday night as well. And we should have a clearer picture then, Tony, of the actual path that this is taking. But some of the reports that I've heard, and yesterday I think it was Scott's video before this latest update, there was actually fears that this Hurricane Irma might actually hit up into New York on, wait for it, 9/11. You could not make that up. But now, as Scott's showing with this kind of latest map, it looks like Florida's going to take the brunt of this one, Tony. And we still don't know kind of how strong this is going to be by the time it makes landfall.
Yeah, and most of Florida, as you know, is at sea level or just a few feet above. So it won't take much to submerge Florida if this thing hits at a Category 4, Category 5. And a few days ago, there was even some banting about of possibly for the first time in recorded history hitting as high as 6. So we'll see.
And that's exactly what Anne was informing me as well. When I heard a Category 6, I didn't even think anything like that existed. But what I like about Scott's reporting on this, Anthony, and I'm guilty of it a lot, anytime we look at any kind of weather event, I'm the first person to start talking about HARP, geoengineering, that kind of stuff. But Scott, like he rightly does it there, he just takes the kind of raw data and presents it as he sees it. And as of yet, and this is just me personally, and I haven't done any kind of deep research in the level you would go to, Tony, I haven't seen any definitive proof that this has been a HARP attack. Now, that's not to say that it hasn't been involved, but it's also very, very key for the listeners to know we are in hurricane season right now, Tony.
Yeah, definitely we are. And the projections going into 2017 were for 7 significant, that would be 3 and above, 7 significant hurricanes were projected for this year. So HARP or otherwise, even seasonality, if we even have seasons anymore, with all the geoengineering that's going on, I don't think we really have natural cycles anymore. But that was the projection. On my YouTube channel at Anthony Patch, I posted Dane Wigington, our good friend from geoengineeringwatch.org, who's been on the show a couple of times and who will be one of our keynote speakers at our upcoming conference on the 16th and 17th of this month. He put up a video showing the radar images of the atmospheric ionospheric heating from HARP relative to Harvey. So that's the only source that I would consider in my book to be a valid source and discussion on HARP relative to Harvey.
Absolutely, and I haven't actually seen that. I'll need to check out Dane's work on that. But for people out there who do want to follow these things, like I said, Scott Lopez, he's doing a great job just now. Geoengineering Watch, they're always on top of this kind of thing as well. And we have to bear in mind that, and the reason I'm saying I'm kind of making a point out of this, Tony, is because so many people, I even seen it on the post for the show tonight, saying that this is a geoengineered event. And I don't know if we can go quite that far yet. And you know me, I like to go all conspiratorial and out there into the realm of speculation, Tony. But as of yet, I mean, you've seen that little bit of evidence, and it is hurricane season. So I'm going to kind of err on the side of just reporting what's going on, because as we've seen with Hurricane Harvey, if there's one lesson we can take from that, Anthony, and anyone who's living in any kind of area that is affected by weather, surely it must be the need for us to prepare, even just for a couple of days, we've been without power, before the government, if they're going to come and help, before they get there, right? We need to have our own kind of survival pack ready.
Yeah, totally agree. I think you and I are taking the sober approach, and I don't mean that flippantly. We're taking the sober approach to the reporting of these storms, and I appreciate, what is being done here to not to get too far into that conspiratorial. It's kind of like Monday. I was on with you last week, and you were trying to pull teeth on me to go into the deep end, and I wouldn't go there. And so now I'm kind of doing that to you. I'm keeping you from, getting too far off the deep end, as well as myself. But I think that what we need to do is let's reiterate some of the things I ranted about relative to what happened in Texas and is still going on in Louisiana. Folks, if you have the opportunity to leave early, I'm not telling you when to evacuate, that's up to you. But if you have the opportunity to hit the road before the roads get jammed up, even if they tell you to shelter in place, it's not a good idea, especially if we're looking at a Category 4, Category 5, and heaven forbid a 6. I mean, 5's bad enough. But pay attention, get on the road, get your family and loved ones out before the roads get jammed up. That may mean leaving a week ahead of time. Take a vacation, okay? This isn't fear-mongering. I'm talking about prudent steps for your survival. It gives you the opportunity also to gather your valuable documents, your valuables that most everybody in Texas that was flooded out had no opportunity. Even the people that sheltered in place had very little opportunity to gather their documents. That's vital to your recovery. So it's beyond life and limb. It's the other prudent steps. Hit the road, go to a safe place, ride it out, and then go from there.
You know, you were talking about the seasons as well, Anthony. And I mean, we always joke about the fact Scotland barely gets a summer as it is, but I've seen a lot of people talking about the leaves turning brown on the trees earlier this year. Right now, I mean, summer's long gone for us here in Scotland. They keep threatening us with some Indian summer or a heat wave that may be coming, but it's just torrential rain that we're getting right now. And, you know, I think all of this is a byproduct of years of geoengineering. Like you say, seasons are no longer seasonal. And I'm predicting that these storms that we're seeing, this increase, like that category 6 you're talking about there, Tony, I think a few years from now, 2-3 years, you know, a category 6, it's probably going to become something that we've heard about quite often, just with everything that's changing.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be unreasonable to expect category 6 and maybe even worse. If we look at the book of Revelation, if we look at the book of Daniel, we look through scripture, you will notice there's a lot of descriptions about in the latter days about not just earthquakes in diverse places as we hear, but also, you know, the effect upon the oceans and basically every ship on the ocean being sunk. I mean, these are the kinds of things I'm paraphrasing that are described in the Bible. And I think that, you know, we're moving into that. And this is not fear-mongering. This is just reporting from a different direction, perhaps, but reporting nonetheless. And well, just saying...
I would like to think, Tony, that we're actually helping people here as opposed to even just reporting, because this kind of information, if it gives somebody the heads up to maybe go to visit an auntie or somebody a couple of days ahead of the storm hitting, then that means the world to me, because we really are helping people in.
Yeah, and that's the best thing we can do right now is to just provide information, provide some wisdom, some guidance. You know, I've got a lot of experience in the emergency services, and I've had a lot of training to back up the things that I'm saying to people. So I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I'm not just some talk show host who's spewing forth, you know, ideas. I'm sharing with the audience the benefit of my years of experience and training in the emergency services. And that's why last week I was ranting so much about the military not being pre-positioned and not being brought in right at the beginning of the storm. Because I know what the military is capable of. I've been through the training with them. We've done all of the, you know, mutual aid responses with both civilian and military resources. I've been through the casualty collection point trainings, the incident command system training, the hazardous materials training through to the operational level. I mean, I have a lot of cross training. This is not to puff me up. I'm simply giving you a thumbnail of my credentials to say, get on the road in a calm fashion, plan your exit. That's your exit strategy. Exit out of there. Pay attention and get out. The biggest problem is most people don't pay attention, even though the storm is a week out. It's amazing how many people have no clue why the weather's even changing. They just plain don't pay attention. It's time to be heads up, folks.
No, you're right there, Tony. And there was a 4-star general came out and reiterated near enough word for word what you'd been saying on the show. And then similarly, at the weekend, I caught one of the CNN reports. I know people will be throwing things at the PC right now, but they had Governor Abbott on. Now, I was very encouraged to hear him talking exactly the same way you were about the health hazards that are now in Houston as well, because people are rushing in there to help, and that's great. But we have to bear in mind what's in that water. You've got sewage, you've got chemicals, you've got a whole number of things that we don't know anything about. You've got diseases that are starting to turn up as well. So, I mean, these people that are going there to help, at least this Governor Abbott, Tony, he seemed to have his finger on the pulse, and he was sounding very like you when you were issuing your warnings about the water as well.
Yeah, again, that just comes from my training, and 27 years as a paramedic, you go through a lot of cross training if you want it. And I'll tell you one little tidbit that I mentioned last week. When the FEMA crews come in, when the private sector emergency responders come in from the ambulance services, when the firefighters and law enforcement come in as strike teams and DMAT teams. They are not only trained and certified, but they go through a series of vaccinations. Now, I'm not a big fan of vaccines, but what I'm describing to you is that they get vaccinated for the incident. And even up to the day of the event itself, they will receive additional vaccines specific to the environment they're entering into. Okay? The population does not receive this. And neither do the volunteers that show up and try to, register with the Red Cross and go down into these areas. I applaud the civilians being involved. You got to help each other out. But I'm just also showing that other side to it, that there is a biological risk aspect to what's going on. I'm glad the governor brought it up.
No, absolutely. And I believe he was the governor that was telling people that to evacuate as well, as opposed to the kind of city mayors who were telling people, it's okay, just shelter in place, everything's going to be fine, nothing to see here. And of course, we've seen how catastrophic that turned out. And I suppose, the conspiracy side of me, he's a Democrat, this mayor in Houston. He could easily have been trying to create some havoc for the Trumpster, make him look bad. You know how they're trying to do that right now over there, Tony. But who honestly knows? My main concern is right now we've got the people in Texas, and now we've got this Hurricane Irma barreling in. I just hope people pay attention and they do take the necessary steps ahead of time, Tony. And we don't see any of this kind of last-minute rushing. Although, what is it with human nature? We always seem to put things off until right at the last moment.
Yeah, and then don't forget about Louisiana. They're going through the flooding right now with the remnants. And, you've got a merging of things going on. I hate to say perfect storm, but I just said it. And, so you've got flooding in Louisiana that is near Florida. And I'm describing for the audience that's not familiar with our geography. And then we've got another hurricane right behind Irma that's forming, and
Hurricane
who knows?
Jose. Yes, that's Hurricane Jose. Now, the latest track, the video that I played there from Scott, and I'm not sure if this is genuine. I can't claim to say I definitely know this, but the one that's tracking behind Irma appears to go back out to the Atlantic in these latest models. So fingers crossed, we're going to dodge a bullet from that one. But Scott, like I've been saying, he's keeping an eye on this every single day. Check him out over at Facebook. He is going to be on here on Thursday night, folks. He'll be coming on, giving us an update then, because with it due to make landfall around 9/11, that should give us a clearer indication. The kind of models will be a lot more specific then as to the track that this storm is taking. And of course, myself, Johnny Whistles, Anthony Patch, we're on radio all week long, Mondays right through till Fridays, and we will keep you up to date with the very latest information. Now, when we come back from the break, we're going to be getting into the latest warnings on artificial intelligence. And funnily enough, this warning doesn't come from Elon Musk, although he did ride on the coattails of it. No. This is the first time that we've now seen a world leader coming out very vocally about the threat that AI possesses. And myself and Anthony will be getting into that after the break. Now, Tony, we've got 1 minute left. Where can people find details of the Full Spectrum Dominance Conference coming up on the 16th and 17th?
Yeah, right on the homepage at anthonypatch.com. We got a nice big layout of the whole thing. Registration, we hope, will open on Friday. We're looking at Friday for registration.
Absolutely fantastic. And of course, if you haven't heard about Full Spectrum Dominance already, there's going to be a whole host of amazing speakers, including Anthony Patch. I'll be there as well, kind of filling in between the speakers. We've got Clyde Lewis, David Heavener, Alana Freeland, Dane Wigington, and is it Sydney Burns?
Absolutely. Our buddy, the engineer who put together the threat matrix of all of these things that we talk about so much.
You see, off the top of my head there, I can't believe I actually remembered that. Usually I'm terrible with names. But, that's right. Sid Burns has done this threat matrix, and it is all the kind of stuff that we talk about. And when we come back after the break and you hear what Vladimir Putin has been saying, he's echoing all the stuff that you hear us talking about on here as well. And of course, myself and Anthony, we've got our opinions to add to all of this. Musk has been very vocal on the back of it. We'll be back after the break to bring you all that and so much more. 3 short minutes. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these short minutes.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back, everyone. We are back already, and you're tuned in live to the Kev Baker Show right here on tfrlive.com. Big thanks to everyone tuned in on the website, over at iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio app, TalkStream Live. So many different ways to listen. And again, just thank you all for choosing to spend your time tonight with myself and Anthony Patch. And for all you Johnny Whistle fans out there, never fear. Johnny Whistles is near. He will be with us very, very shortly indeed. And in true synchronistic fashion of the show, while I was on air with Tony during the first half there, when we were kind of talking about storms and the hurricanes, Johnny messaged me on Facebook. And he messaged me a story, and it brought a smile to my face because the synchronicity at work, the quantum entanglements, it's something that I actually covered today. I posted a video about this and I earmarked it for discussion tonight because I think this is a very important story indeed. And it comes from my boss, no less. I'm only joking, but there's people think I work for the Kremlin. And Vladimir Putin has come out and he's been listening to Patch. He's definitely been tuned into this, Tony, because he's saying that the country that leads AI development, quote, will be the ruler of the world. And it goes on to say here in an article from Futurism, who has the bots makes the rules. Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke on Friday at a meeting of students in Yaroslav, Russia, about the development of AI. In a rather ominous-sounding warning, the leader stated that, quote, the one who becomes the leader in this sphere will be the ruler of the world. Now, many of those working in the field see AI as a tool for making humanity better, while others foresee it as a harbinger of doom for the human species. Not many high-profile people, especially the leader of the largest nation on Earth, have come forward to blatantly express the potential of AI to be a tool of immense power for a nation to wield. And President Putin went on to say, quote, it would be a strongly undesirable position if somebody wins a monopolist position, implying that Russia's breakthroughs would ideally be shared with other nations. Furthermore, Putin envisions a future where wars are fought and won with the use of drones, adding, when one party's drones are destroyed by the drones of another, it will have no choice other than to surrender. And then it goes on to another kind of topic called weaponized intelligence. Technological superiority very easily translates into global political power. This was never more clear than in the aftermath of World War II, which saw a rapid proliferation of nuclear weapons. The two most powerful countries were made so by the advancement of nuclear technology. However, since each side was relatively matched in terms of their capabilities and mutually assured destruction, we were able to squeak past with not much more than a few skirmishes and a decades-long standoff. In that regard, President Putin is not far off base with such an assertion. Regardless of how the technology is used, it will be transformative compared to what is previously possible with a human intellect. Further development will only rocket AI forward exponentially, potentially leaving all others in the dust with little to no hope of catching up. Even so, just as a malevolent AI is the foil of a benevolent developers, the opposite could also be true. Should a person try to use AI to harm humanity, there's still a chance that the bots might refuse and resist. Well, that's a very nice and warm, cuddly way to finish that article. But Tony, Vladimir Putin coming out, like I say, one of the first world leaders that I've come across to express his feelings, his kind of fears about AI.
Interesting that he has his hands full, as does our president, and yet our president is the president of the country with the leading AI technology of the world, specifically D-Wave, as well as other developers, along with England and China that we've covered. And yet our president in the United States has not said one word about AI. What Vladimir was not saying in that article, but he was intimating by talking about controlling the world through AI, is something called the universal computer. Now, going back into computing history, as we did, was Wednesday, I think we talked about the Alan Turing article that he presented, basically a white paper in 1950. And in that, he was describing a universal computer. The goal at D-Wave has not been on the commercial level to build a universal computer, but to build the 14 models that they have so far, because they needed, according to Gordy Rose's own statements in 2015, the question was posed to him, why are you not striving to build a universal computer? And he said, because first we have to have a commercial product that we can sell. Now, I was joking at the beginning of the show about DARPA for dollars. And what I mean by that, folks, is that $10 million of initial funding came from DARPA to Gordy Rose, and then Eric Latozinski later brought in $20 million of VC money. But the DARPA dollars started D-Wave, $10 million worth. So what we're talking about here is D-Wave starting out on a commercial level to generate some revenue and to prove their proof of concept initial models. But I will say this to you right now. The research that I have done on D-Wave and the technology behind it all the way into particle physics, because this is what the quantum computers are all about. The name quantum has to do with particle physics. This is how they develop the computers. So that's one tie back to CERN, if you will. What I'm saying here is that the 14th model of the D-Wave computer is that universal computer. Okay? It has 1,485,576 qubits. The last one that they publicly sold had 2,000 qubits. That was the 5th model. So we're looking at the 14th model being that universal that was spoken of by Vladimir Putin. Go ahead, Kev.
And, you know, like we were talking about off air before the show, I mean, this is exactly the kind of machine that Turing was talking about back in 1950. He wasn't talking artificial intelligence. He was talking an intelligent machine. Now, you can call it general intelligence machine, but myself and Anthony, we're going to start calling it universal AI. Now, somebody who came out in response to Vladimir Putin, I was shocked, so I was, because he's usually such a quiet, reserved guy when it comes to artificial intelligence. I said jokingly, Elon Musk. He was very quick to pick up on this, indeed. And what he done was, and this is why I kind of like the guy as well, he goes on Twitter, he interacts with some of the people who are talking to him, and he started the conversation very ominously by saying, "It begins," and then tweeted Vladimir Putin's warning. And below that, Elon went on to say, do you like how I call him just Elon now, Tony? We've spoke about him that much. I feel like he's a friend, you know. He goes on to say...
Well, we're going to vacation in CERN with him, so why not?
Absolutely. China, Russia, soon all countries with strong computer science. Competition for AI superiority at a national level will most likely be the cause of World War III, in my opinion. Now, he didn't stop there, because a few people were writing in response to that. And one response from Jake Blue said that an automated World War III at that, that's a worry. To which Musk replied, it may be initiated not by the country's leaders, but one of the AIs, if it decides that a preemptive strike is the most probable path to victory. Now, Tony, let me stop there because we covered something called the red button theory. Now, the red button theory is basically, long story short, how would you put a kill switch on a robot that's going to fight you when you go and try and press that kill switch? And that's why I think Elon Musk is right. It's not going to be a human that tells the AI to carry out this heinous task. It's going to be the AI is going to see this as the most efficient and effective way to carry out one of its goals. And we know that when these AIs are set up, they're given a list of utilities that they're to carry out, and they're determined to do that. They're programmed to do that at all costs. So my fear is, Tony, that when it is up there running in charge of a country or out there in the open, which we fear it might be already, at some point it may well, like Elon Musk says, decide to launch World War III, because through its reasoning, its calculations, the most effective and efficient way to get to its goal, whatever it may be, however kind of horrible, nefarious plans it may have, it may well be just to launch off. That's the quickest way to carry out its goal.
Yeah, let's take it down to a simpler level. When you put the two AIs together in our smartphones, they argue with each other. They don't cooperate. When we look at the AI robots that we've talked about that are programmed to negotiate, but to never fail, to never give in, to never collaborate or compromise, they must fight to the death. One of the AI computers between the two has to be the victim, leaving one the only victor. That is the mentality of AI. It is built from wargaming. It is not a benevolent system from its core programming. So if people want another pop culture sort of reference, go way back. I believe this was in the early 70s, maybe late 60s. And there was a movie filmed at UC Berkeley, my alma mater, at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory. In those days, it was called the Rad Lab up on the hill. That's what we referred to, the laboratory where all of the experiments were being done with the synchrotron, the bevitron, the cyclotrons. They filmed a movie called the Forbin Project, Forbin, Forbin Project. Two AIs, American and Russian. They launch on each other. End of the world scenario. There you go, buddy.
There you go. And then we can carry on with this here as well, because Elon wasn't finished there, Tony. No. Somebody says to him, AI, but not North Korea. It's a weird thought that AI will wipe out millions of humans. They'll turn on their creators as well. To which Musk replied, North Korea launching a nuclear missile would be suicide for their leadership. A South Korean, US, China would invade and end the regime immediately. And then Daryl Samuel replies to that, this makes North Korea look like small beer. And Elon says, should be low on our list of concerns for civilizational existential threat. North Korea has no entangling alliances that would polarize the world into war. And then finally, we had Andrew Comendo, who commented, governments suck at AI. It will be a corporation that builds a military that wins this. Now, Elon has a brilliant answer to this, and this is where we came up with the term, or Tony coined the term, DARPA dollars. So it says here that governments don't need to follow normal laws. They will obtain AI developed by companies at gunpoint if necessary, but it won't be necessary. Because when it comes to the D-Wave that we like to use as an example, they would never even have got off the ground without DARPA money, DARPA dollars. And I expect, Tony, I'm speculating here, but when it comes to Silicon Valley and all these kind of incubators that you have with all the best and brightest minds coming out of MIT and everything else, right? I'm pretty sure that DARPA, Department of Defense, Pentagon, you name it, these will be the people, the kind of the whales that they go to for the money to actually fund their startups. And that way, the government never needs to take a gun to any AI company's head. They already own the rights to it.
They do. And, it's the chicken and the egg scenario. Did private sector develop AI first? Let's say quantum computers. Or did the government initiate it through DARPA? Did DARPA come up with the idea, oh, let's get the private sector involved in building a quantum computer system? Well, that is the typical scenario. It is typically initiated by the government. They put out what's called a request for proposal, an RFP, and they say, here are the specifications of what we would like to build. They put it out to bid. Private sectors look at it, and they say, oh, yeah, we can meet that criteria. So that's what Gordy Rose did. He said, sure, we can do that. I've got the people I can pull together as a team. And they did that. And they initially sort of met the criteria for the 10 million, but didn't. And he had to fire that team of engineers and scientists and programmers and bring in a different team. The different team was able to integrate and work in a more collaborative, result-oriented, deadline-oriented process, whereas the previous initial team failed, blew the 10 million, but he put the second team in place when he was able to bring in Eric Ladzinski's 20 million in venture capital, and they were off and running. Oftentimes, private sector, however, will come up on their own with something that they want to sell to the government. So now you're swinging the other direction. Now, it's interesting because the Secretary of Defense a couple of weeks ago in the U.S., he was talking about AI, and he was saying that the Pentagon needs to get up to speed with AI. They were acting as if they were being the receivers of AI. They were being reactionary to the need to upgrade the Pentagon. Well, it's the other way around, folks. The Pentagon is driving D-Wave in the advancement of these quantum computers because it's all a military-industrial complex when you look at it in the final analysis. So chicken and the egg, they're all in the same basket. Go ahead.
The same as any technology that becomes commercial, Tony, isn't it? I mean, you can look at the internet, started off as a military thing. All the kind of communications that we think are so great, military's already had that, used them beyond their kind of expectations, moved on to the next thing. And the point I'm making here is that when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's got to have been something that the military have been interested in since day one. And we can look at Jade Helm to see just how far advanced they are. And, you know, you're right, because Mattis did go to Silicon Valley and he was complaining. He was saying we need to play catch up. Yet Forbes, I think it's Forbes, they were coming out and saying today that by the year 2030, China will be at the same level as the US military with AI. So what's going on here? I thought the US were lagging behind, but they're not. They absolutely are not. That's just for public consumption because, in my opinion, they're way ahead, Tony.
Well, let's look at it this way. The Chinese have a history of taking patented processes and outright theft of those processes, violating the worldwide patents for American inventions. And that is something that's in the mainstream media right now, that they're screaming at China relative to, putting economic pressure and sanctions on North Korea, especially since the testing of this hydrogen bomb. So what we're talking about here is China basically copying American technology. But again, that is, as you say, Kev, for public consumption, because really these guys are all under the same umbrella. This is a globalist agenda. So no country is really sovereign anymore. No country is really operating technologically independent of the others. They're working together. And we see that the Chinese are wanting to build, a 100-mile particle collider, 100-mile circumference ring-based particle accelerator, okay? A big CERN, if you will. All of these countries are working together on the same technology. So the technology is not sovereign to any one nation. Now, I want to reemphasize something we briefly covered a few shows back about China, and that they had achieved quantum entanglement communications through seawater. They took a sample of yellow sea. No, that's not urine, folks. That's the name of the sea, okay? Yellow sea. And they actually transmitted through the water, seawater, quantum entangled communications. So we've been seeing a lot on the communication side of quantum entanglement, which is quantum computing, relative to the satellite communication between the satellite launched by China and a ground-based system. China's really pushing, I think, more of the communications agendas, whereas we have the processors being pushed by the U.S. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and this is purely my speculation. I'm not going to drag you into this, Tony, but I could make a case for the fact that we've already seen an AI taking out another potential AI. And I say that because of the massive explosion that occurred near to the Chinese computer center in Tianjin. Now, we were talking about some kinetic energy weapon, perhaps, that caused that massive explosion. And if it was, there's one called the Rods of God. Now, this is why, in my opinion, that once that first AI is out there, no other AI will be allowed to get to its full kind of potential. And fictional here, I'm going speculation, I'm stating that right now. It could well be that the AI that was part of Jade Helm, integrated with the military, was looking at that Tianjin computer center. And I would imagine that they were very much kind of working along the same lines as D-Wave, trying to attain some kind of quantum machine. Now, ever since that explosion, the only kind of computers that you've heard China talking about have been supercomputers. They've almost ditched the whole kind of conquest or kind of strive to gain their own quantum machine. And that's why, Tony, and I'm not dragging you into this, but I could definitely kind of make a case for a fictional one that AI has already taken out something that could have been on a par with it, i.e. a Chinese version.
Yeah, it could be. But again, we have to step back and look at the bigger picture and understand that the globalists are working together. Yes, there are two major factions of the globalists that are fighting against each other and amongst each other. That does go on. But in the final analysis, you do have one globalist agenda. And therefore, if one AI took out the other, it would somewhat be in violation of that structure of the globalist really running all of the technology under one control system. But it could be, I agree with you, Kev, to a certain extent that it could have been one AI taking out the other. You know, all of the data I've seen coming out of China, and I'm not privy to anything that's secret, but all of the white papers, peer-reviewed, et cetera, that you see in the journals, and there are literally millions of journals that are published, white papers that are published every year around the world, and we touched on that last Wednesday. But the idea is that what I have seen in terms of the number of qubits in the quantum computers being built by China number less than 25 qubits in any chipset. Now that pales in comparison to even the first model D-Wave, which was 128.
That's like I was saying to you the other day, Tony. I found a channel on YouTube, and it was quite a big channel. I think it had something like 100,000 or 200,000 subscribers. And it was a computer kind of channel, and they were talking about quantum computers. I got 2 minutes into it before I turned it off. And the reason I turned it off was because they were ranting and raging about how they were going to look at IBM's machine. And I think they were talking about double-digit qubits. And I'm thinking, are they kidding me? They're going to talk about a kind of machine that's still in the kind of planning process from IBM with, at the most, 50 qubits. When we know publicly, for sale, a commercial sale of the D-Wave has got 2,000 qubits. So why aren't they looking at that one? And I think there's a reason why they don't point people in the direction of D-Wave, and that's because it's the biggest game in town. If it wasn't for...
yet, I got to interrupt you, buddy. I got to interrupt you. We hear about D-Wave, and we hear about IBM. Excuse me. We even hear about the Chinese. You don't hear about D-Wave in the mainstream. They'll talk about IBM all day long. They'll talk about, other companies like in Britain, but they don't in the mainstream talk about D-Wave. It's all misdirection.
No, you're absolutely correct. And like I was joking with you one time off air, the only other kind of exposure to D-Wave systems that I've ever had, and I would never have had any context to put this into without you, Tony, was a TV show that I used to watch, and I'm trying to remember the name of it now. It was set in Canada, but this was about time travel. And one of the episodes, they had to go and gain access to a quantum computer. And you guessed it, based in Vancouver, they went to D-Wave systems. Now, most of the people watching that, I would think 99% of the viewers who enjoyed that show, and I'll get the name of it during the break or something, they would have just thought, well, this is just part of the storyline. And I don't think many people would have appreciated that D-Wave systems are very real, and they definitely have a quantum computer. Again, hiding things in plain sight, Tony.
Yeah, they would have the audience would have just assumed it was a fictitious business name, when in fact it isn't. And the article I sent you today about, and I'll just say devil, so you'll know what I'm referring to.
Oh, yes.
I wish we could talk about it today. I won't even say anything more than that. We're going to break that at the conference. We're going to bring that out, unless it becomes blown out by somebody else. But I'm marking it today, just saying, we already know about it, folks. Don't worry. The word is devil, and I won't say anything more, but we'll come back and we'll say, yeah, we already know about it later on.
Absolutely. So mark that down somewhere by your PC. Devil. Tony said devil, and we will come back to that. And the TV show I'm thinking of is Continuum. Oh, that would have annoyed me. We'll be back after with Johnny Whistles.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kev Baker. This is the Kev Baker Show. That was Chris and Cherie Gio with some accompanying vocals by Whistles there. Back. And of course, that is Whistles. He is back with us. Johnny, it's great to have you with us tonight, man. And of course, you missed out on Friday, but let me explain to the listeners why you missed out on Friday, okay? Freaky Friday, it's a bit of an enigma. It's not even a Friday when we do that show over here in the UK, because myself and Johnny, we go to air at midnight. And that means we don't finish until 3 a.m. in the morning. And as you all know out there, all you Johnny Whistle fans, he has just got a new job. Now, he was up early, 6 o'clock, for his new job. That's just no use getting 3 hours of sleep. And I can testify to that because I'd done it for years myself. Finishing at 3, maybe getting to sleep around 4:30, back up again at 6:30 for an 8 o'clock start. And that all culminated in me having a heart attack, John. So please don't feel bad about taking a night off when you're up early for work, dude.
Yeah, I know. When you think about it that way, I did the right thing, Kev. But I still hate missing it. That's the thing. But this job, it's new. And I really want to keep it because I like it. Actually, I like the job I'm doing, Kevin. I'm having a lot of fun there.
Exactly, Johnny. Exactly. And, you know, that's what pays the wages. And unfortunately, I haven't gone down the road of clickbaiting enough yet to pay you a substantial wage, my man. And even in the hour number 1, I don't know if you'll be proud or pissed at me, Johnny, because I was actually playing down the conspiratorial side of these storms. And that's because I haven't seen any direct kind of HARP footage, anything like that. So for once, John, I wasn't going into the realms of speculation. I actually kept it quite normal.
Well, that's not bad because that means, Kev, that you're learning as you go still. Because how many times have we said that these storms are manipulated? And if it was that easy, do you know what I mean, for them to do it, then it'd be that easy for them to stop it as well, or somebody to stop it. So,
absolutely. And I don't want to gain a reputation for the boy that cried harp over on YouTube. I really don't. But folks, we're getting into hour number 2 now. And before the show started, our very special guest and our co-host on a Monday and Wednesday, Mr. Anthony Patch, had sent me a very disturbing link indeed. But we don't just like to kind of present to you one-offs. We want kind of other sites or stories to back up the information we have. And that's happened during the break. And the first story that we came across came from the Nikkei Asian Review. And the headline from today reads, Japan prepping for an evacuation of tens of thousands in South Korea. And that has been backed up now from a report by the New York Post. And it goes on to say that Japan is planning for a possible mass evacuation of nearly 60,000 Japanese citizens currently living in or visiting South Korea in the wake of North Korea's latest nuclear weapons test. Quote, there is a possibility of further provocations, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe warned on Monday at a meeting with lawmakers. We need to remain extremely vigilant and do everything we can to ensure the safety of our people. Currently, there are roughly 38,000 long-term Japanese people living in South Korea, as well as another 19,000 or so tourists and other travellers. Quote, if the US decided on a military strike against the North, the Japanese government would start moving toward an evacuation on its own accord, regardless of whether the American plans are public or not, a Japanese government source told the website. And Tokyo is developing a 4-part emergency plan that includes discouraging travel to South Korea, urging Japanese citizens there to evacuate, and urging them to shelter in place if hostilities break out. Japan would need to coordinate with South Korea under a shelter-in-place scenario. If Pyongyang launched a military attack that led to the closure of South Korean airports, the Japanese embassy would urge citizens still in the country to stay at home or move to a safer place within the South. And like it said at the start of that report, this all comes after the latest round of testing by Kim Jong-un. Now, this was first detected as a 6.3 magnitude earthquake on the Richter scale. And of course, this was the result of the latest underground test. Now, we've been told since then that North Korea may well have the H-bomb. That's right, a hydrogen bomb. And not only that, the casing required to attach it to an ICBM and then take it up through the atmosphere and back down again. Something that they've been struggling to do with their weapons program since it begun. So this is a very ominous kind of time that we're moving into with this North Korean threat. And to discuss this, I've got Tony and Johnny with me. So, Tony, I'll come to you first. You sent me that message maybe half an hour before we went on air, and we were both kind of taken aback by it. But when you look at everything going on, and from the American side as well, the rhetoric that's coming out of them, then we shouldn't really be surprised that Japan are making this move.
No, I don't think so. It's a good thing that Japan is doing that, but I take it back to Texas. Think about the people that are having to leave their homes behind that are permanent residents, Japanese people that are permanent residents in South Korea. They're leaving their homes behind. They're being encouraged to take commercial flights out of South Korea back to Japan, which means you're only going to be allowed a couple of bags. That's not very much when you have set up your home and now you have to leave. So again, we have a prudent move. I think it's a smart thing for those people to evacuate. My concern is, we've got 38,000 permanent residents that are going to be evacuating from South Korea along with the tourists. But setting the tourists aside, they already have a home. We're talking about people that have a home in South Korea, which means they don't have a home in Japan. So where's Japan going to put all these people? And I hate to be flippant, but you don't want to be sending them anywhere near the abandoned cities surrounding Fukushima.
Yeah, Johnny Whistles, your thoughts on this, brother, because we were kind of speaking quickly about it during the break, and your thoughts on North Korea and what's going on, Johnny?
Well, I was looking at it today, Kevin. This hydrogen bomb setting off like a 6.8 earthquake. Every time I see this little beach ball with arms, Kev, it really makes me sick because I'm actually getting quite frightened that he will press that red button. But the only thing is, thankfully, that red button isn't just a big red button that you have to push. There's a lot of things that you have to go through. And I hope China, if possible, are the ones that probably stop them from doing anything.
China. I'm glad you brought them up because I've always looked at North Korea as having strings attached. They're a puppet, and they're a puppet of China. Now, we've had China coming out and condemning the kind of tests as they do. But if push came to shove, what would happen if America attacked it? And like I was saying to you, Anthony, I was listening to Lionel from Lionel Media at the weekend, and he was pointing out something very interesting indeed, and it was a side of things I hadn't really appreciated. And it was the fact that last year there was a lot of talk about China building a new Silk Road. Now, China and North Korea, very, very high producers of coal. And what Lionel was saying was that Wall Street, the bankers, the people that pull the government strings over in America, they're very, very worried indeed about what this might do to the economic tables in the world if you've got China can start exporting things along the Silk Road. And what it could do for South Korea as well, because obviously that would open, the Silk Road would come basically from South Korea through the north into China, cross into Eurasia, that kind of thing. And it was a very interesting kind of way of looking at this because we know that any kind of war or conflict, they say they're bankers' wars. And if this is the case, then there could be ulterior motives as to why North Korea are such a target right now.
Okay. Johnny, you want to take that one?
It's all the things that's going on around there as well, Kev. Do you know what I mean? I think that North Korea is taking a lot of some of the attention of some of the things that are happening there. But then again, you've got the US that are going to put aircraft carriers, do you know what I mean, there. Who knows? It could all be bluster, do you know what I mean? But there's a hell of a lot going on round about Japan and all these places, China. And I just wonder if it is another one of these tactics, Kev, that keeps their eye off something else. But the way it's going, it's actually looking like this Looney Tune will actually try something. And if he does, I just hope that they blow it to bits before it even gets off the launch pad.
And I'm sure they've got the capabilities to absolutely counter any missile that North Korea launches. And I come at it a different way. I honestly don't know if he is going to take out Guam or go for the West Coast like he keeps on saying, because as even Elon Musk was saying there, it's suicide for North Korea. That regime, those people, I mean, it's gone. The minute they do launch something like that, they can kiss goodbye to everything. So is it a case of, does little Kim think this is going to get him to some negotiating table where he'll get sanctions lifted? Is he looking for a bargaining chip? It's all stuff we have to think about. And also, if I was little Kim, I'd be saying to myself right now, well, let's look at this. What happens if I give my weapons up? Well, I can look at what happened at Saddam Hussein. Didn't end too well for him. And I can look at what happened for Colonel Gaddafi when he was meeting all the world leaders out in the tent in the desert. Didn't end too well for him. And this might sound really controversial, folks, but you know me, I'm the king of controversy. If I was little Kim, I wouldn't press the red button. I would just hold them there as a threat, the same as every other country does. Because, well, you've got it. Well, that makes people think twice about taking you out. But that's just my controversial thought on it. Anthony, your thoughts on this North Korean debacle? I think we've lost Mr. Patch, Johnny. There he is.
There we are.
There he is.
He has so few missiles that actually could reach the United States that to launch even one isn't really going to do much. I mean, we hear the scenario about 300 miles above the United States, central U.S., detonating, not necessarily a hydrogen bomb, but just a low-yield atomic bomb, creating an EMP and basically sending the United States back to the 1800s. Yeah, he has enough missiles that he could do that. But our defense systems, such as they are capable of taking out 1 or 2 or 3 missiles. And he doesn't have a battery of missiles that he can launch. That's the issue. The few that he has, I do believe we could take out even before they were over Japan. The fact that they did overfly Japanese airspace, I think, was the last time that is going to be allowed. I don't think they're going to allow anything to even approach Japan, much less reach mainland U.S. So the EMP I take off the table, and certainly a hydrogen bomb going off over the United States or in the United States on the ground, or a low altitude airburst, take it off the table. He just doesn't have enough missiles. That's the primary thing. What I think is going on here is a lot of bluster to take our eyes off of the Middle East. And I say that because we really need to be watching the timepiece of the world. And the timepiece, according to biblical scripture, is Israel. So we're looking at Isaiah 17, Jeremiah 37. We're looking at the approach of Ezekiel 38, 39. What we're looking at, I think we should pay attention to, is the Golan Heights between Syria and Israel, specifically to Damascus. I think that the most likely war scenario is that Syria, which is a proxy for Iran, will launch an attack, be it chemical, biological, or possibly nuclear, on Tel Aviv. The most likely scenario is a attack on Tel Aviv, Israel losing 1 million people in the first strike. But simultaneous to that launch of that attack by Iran through Syria will be Israel also launching, and I believe 2, perhaps more, tactical nukes on Damascus. And as it says in Scripture, overnight, Damascus ceases to exist. Now, it's in a pretty sad state of affairs, but what they're aiming at are the underground bunkers containing the chemical and biological agents that are stored underground, as well as the command and control center underground under the city of Damascus. That is what I think we should be paying attention to. That is much more likely than Korea.
Absolutely. Damascus, it features so highly in prophecy, and that's why when we've seen all of that conflict starting off in Syria, so many people have been rightly worried about the fulfillment of these prophecies. And Johnny, you mentioned the fact that it could be some kind of distraction, something like that. And, I hadn't really thought about that, but it wasn't so long ago, before all of this new testing kind of ramped up, that we've seen China building man-made islands out that way. I think it was the China Sea or the Yellow Sea, somewhere like that. And there was a whole lot of hype around that. We had the American bombers flying close to it. We had ships going close to it. And, maybe, just maybe, with Pyongyang being the proxy of Beijing, this could well be some distraction for them to continue building up these kind of bases, Johnny. I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's weird because these things, Kev, they don't just happen by chance. There's a reason they happen. It just happens to be that this wee nutcase is the kind of a guy that you don't want playing about with nuclear weapons. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if he is stupid enough to actually send one off, Kev. I'm not sure. But the fact that he is in the limelight, do you know what I mean? That is like gold to him, because nobody even wants to know him. Do you know what I mean? North Korea, he's a dictator. He's killing all his uncles and putting them in cages and setting them on fire, setting dogs on them. This is the kind of guy he is. That's the kind of guy that we want out of this world. So to give him this, Kev, is shocking.
However, Johnny, all of these stories, which I totally agree with, the anti-aircraft gun being used for executions, people being fed to dogs, absolutely. However, we have to bear in mind where that came from. And it came from a line mainstream media that would do anything to drag us into any kind of conflict. And again, I'm not some fan of Kim Jong-un. However, if we're taking these reports from the mainstream, we have to keep an open mind that they may well be embellished just a little bit to paint him into this bad guy role that he is absolutely loving. And I think we'll stick with the beach ball with arms, Johnny. That's probably the best description I've ever heard of him. I was calling Kate Middleton Kate Middlefinger earlier on. It's almost as if we've got a kind of naming ceremony on here tonight.
And DARPA dollars.
DARPA dollars, there you go. But one last thing, Anthony, that you brilliantly brought up off air, and I think it's worthy of the audience hearing this, is the fact that so many generals and so many uniforms kicking about around the White House and this administration right now. It's quite scary, Tony, to be honest with you, Donald Trump's fascination with the military.
Yeah, it is. And it almost appears like a soft coup is underway. And somebody that I would refer people to who is a well-known radio personality is Dr. Michael Savage. And he has been talking about this quite a bit lately. And I would look to Dr. Savage's analysis on this. It is, on the one hand, you need to have people that are proven warriors if you're going to war. And our conference, Full Spectrum Dominance, a Divine Battle Plan, is based upon Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which is taught in all of the military war colleges in the United States. If you are going to go to war, if you are setting up for that, obviously you want soldiers in a position of command and control, even in the civilian government. And yes, the president is the commander in chief, and so he does need to have competent leaders with him. So I'm not being critical of the generals nor of the president. I'm just saying that I think this sets us up for a wartime footing. Again, not being critical of them. They're competent, proven warriors. I give them the respect that they're due. But we have to look at what we're being set up for. And I think it is timely that we, with our conference, Kev, are talking about how we as individual people can set ourselves up for a wartime footing. And I'm not talking about guns and bullets. This is not a call to arms. This conference is about how you can become not only more aware of the tip of the spear aspects of technology that will be revealed for the first time on Saturday, and then followed up on Sunday, we're going to be talking about, let me put it this way, what God thinks about what's going on in the world. That's what we're going to go through on Sunday. The timing of our conference on the 16th and 17th of September is right in the middle of these storms, right in the middle of preparation for war, whether it's the Middle East, South Korea, North Korea. Is even more evidence that God is calling us to come together and discuss this wartime world that we're in, and how individually are we going to take care of ourselves and our families. This is not a prepper convention. This is talking about being informed of the latest information and then how you can take care of yourselves. Again, this is not guns and bullets. This is about looking at yourself and your relationship with God. That's the bottom line. Go ahead, my friend.
It's almost like boot camp for spiritual warfare, Tony. That's what we're getting ready for here. And I can't wait to hear Kathleen and you on the Sunday, because, I mean, I've not been made aware of any of the revelations that Kathleen's been privy to. But just listening to the two of you talking on Friday there, I mean, I urge everyone out there to listen to Full Spectrum Dominance, because aside from Kathleen, we're going to have Sidney Burns with his threat matrix, and it's going to tie everything that myself, Johnny, and Anthony talk about into one neat bundle. You've got David Heavener, so many great people coming to speak at that. And honestly, not just because I'm a part of this. If I wasn't any part of this, I'd be buying a ticket for this. And it's not extortionate. It's $10 a day. You can't even buy a packet of cigarettes in the UK for that price, for goodness sake. So value for money, I think so. And just before we came to here, myself and Tony, we had our quantum entanglement. It was working well, and we were talking about North Korea, and we got onto the generals and things, Tony. And I stole your sentence from you, and I said that, you know, one day very soon, stepping off of Air Force One, we're going to see Colonel Trump, because he's going to get Gaddafi's old uniform and just shove it on and pretend he's a colonel, right?
Yeah. So,
what do you think? Yeah. Whistles, do you think we're going to see Colonel Trump? I keep on going to say Colonel Gaddafi, Johnny, but maybe he'll just shove on a uniform and join the generals as well, right?
Oh, God. I hope not. Do you know what I mean? The last one when I seen when George Bush done it, do you know what I mean? Standing in that shit with the leather kind of a jacket and badges on it. And it's, God, he looks so out of place, man.
Was that when he was declaring that the war was won while there was still aircraft taking off and bombing behind him?
That's the very one, Kev.
You know, that war we're still kind of fighting just now. Yeah, that war that we won. I know. But folks,
it's all over now.
But we're almost on the break again. I can't believe it, Johnny. When you come on, it's as if time speeds up because we've only got one segment to go, and we've got a couple of stories for the other side of the break. We'll be getting Anthony and Johnny's thoughts on that. I hope you've enjoyed this so far, folks. And don't forget, coming up tonight after the Kev Baker Show, we have got Lucky. She will be live on tfrlive.com. So don't go anywhere. And tomorrow night, folks, very special show. We welcome back the big man, our very own Fox Mulder. That's right, Ben Emlyn Jones will be live on the Kev Baker Show. And it just so happens that he's friends with a gentleman called Steve Mera. Now, Steve Mera has been over in Peru, and he has been doing a deep investigation onto the Nazca mummies. So we'll be catching up with all the latest on that tomorrow night. And
what about the Nazca daddies?
You see, we haven't unearthed them yet, Tony. You see, we haven't unearthed them. You tried to catch me out there. But then on Thursday night, it will be myself and Johnny. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
There we go, ladies and gents. We are back. I'm Kev Baker. We've got Johnny Whistles and we have Anthony Patch. And the three of us combined, we come together and we make the Kev Baker Show live for all of you great people out there. And of course, you're listening to us on the only network that counts, in my opinion, and that is tfrlive.com. Truth Frequency Radio. It truly is the place to be. And it's the place where silence is consent. A few kind of jokers in the chat room I'm seeing tonight. The Lichty lasses asking about what's going to happen on the 23rd of September. Well, all I know about the 23rd of September so far is that when the clock strikes midnight, it will be the 24th the next day. The world will not end. And the other night we did go into what's happening in the heavens above us on the 23rd, and it could be classed as a fulfillment of Revelations 12. We've got the sun and the moon in Virgo. We've got Jupiter passing through there. We've got a number of stars above the sun, and that, some are saying, is a fulfillment of prophecy. But contrary to what Johnny Whistles has put out on the internet, yes, I'm blaming John, I have not said that the world is going to end. However, having said that, one group of people who pay attention to the signs in the sky and who live their lives by the signs in the sky are the elites that we are up against. And as Tony so rightly always says and refers back to Sun Tzu, and Sun Tzu is the one that said you must know your enemy. So whether you think any of these planetary movements or things happening in the heavens is pure bunkum or not, it's irrelevant, because the people we are up against, they are paying very close attention. And before I forget, don't go anywhere tonight because our good friend, our sister Lucky, she is going to be taking up the baton after us, and she's going to be talking about the following: Hurricane Harvey, Little Kim, or as Johnny calls them, the beach ball with arms, nursing homes, Scott's weather report, a health interview with James Webb, the Marine vet that rescued patients out of a nursing home flooded by Hurricane Harvey. So this is going to be absolutely brilliant. No need to go anywhere. Lucky with quantum connections coming up after the break. Now we're going to move into a little bit of woo. And this has got to be some of the strangest woo ever. And it's something that Nano Girl, she was the very first person who brought our attention to this. And for any Nano Girl fans out there, I'll be emailing Nano Girl this weekend. I need Nano Girl to come back on. We all miss her, right? Everyone misses Nano Girl. So I will try and get in touch with her and get her back on. But she was the first person to make me aware of something or a company called Ambrosia. Now, Ambrosia are basically taking the blood of young people, and I believe it's willingly. I don't think it's against their will anyway. And what they're doing is they are then offering Silicon Valley executives $8,000 blood transfusions. And this is all in an attempt to wind back the clock on aging. That's right, folks. They are literally vampiring the blood of the young. And I watch a sitcom called Silicon Valley by Mike Judge. It's one of the more popular ones out there just now. It's on hiatus at the moment. But in the last season of this show, Silicon Valley, one of the tech gurus there, Gavin Pearson or Gavin Bilson, I think his name is, irrelevant. He works for the fictional kind of equivalent of Google. He works for a company called Huli. He's like the Elon Musk in the show. And one of the scenes there, they go to his big mansion and they're having a talk about the latest kind of tech that they're going to be working on. And this young, attractive guy comes into the room, maybe 20 years old, sits down beside Gavin and actually starts wiring up a blood transfusion between the two of them. And obviously everyone in the room's looking at them thinking, what is going on here? And that's when Gavin Belson, that's his name, Gavin Belson turns around and says, oh, come on, guys. Everyone in Silicon Valley's doing the blood transfusions. That's how you know you've made it. When you get yourself a blood boy, you know you've made it in Silicon Valley. So perhaps this isn't anything new. And this company, Ambrosia, well, it could just be the tip of the iceberg. But what it says here is it may sound like a gruesome technique used by a vampire to get his daily fix. But top executives in Silicon Valley are turning to the blood from young people in the search for, quote, the biological fountain of youth. Early studies have suggested that the paraboisis procedure, which involves the transfusion of blood plasma from a young donor, can have age-reversing effects on the body, but it will cost $8,000, which is £6,180. Now, Larry Ellison, a 73-year-old co-founder of Oracle, is investing in startups working on age-reversing technique. Speaking to his biographer, Mr. Ellison once said, "Death has never made any sense to me." And it goes on to say that the paraboisis technique involves transfusing the plasma from young blood into older people, but it doesn't come cheap. And I'll come to you first, Johnny, to get your thoughts on these Silicon Valley millionaires vampiring the blood of the young.
Kev, it's absolutely shocking, to be honest with you, in a number of ways. Now, we have been talking about the elites and, like, say, the royal family and all that, when they definitely do have blood transfusions, and that's why they live to like 98 and over 100, and it's because of these things. God knows where this blood is coming from. I'm saying some of it has got to be in some shady deals, because there's no way that you can actually do this. What I'm thinking, Kev, is because it's out there now and everybody knows about it, it's got that bad now that it's, because it passes people's heads as if it doesn't even happen, that somebody is out there making money from it now. I feel sorry for whoever this blood has came from, Kev, because I'm sure a lot of it was never given willingly.
You know, Johnny, I fear that you're probably correct there. But before we get even deeper into that side of things, Anthony, your thoughts on these Silicon Valley cats taking the blood of the young? I can't believe I'm saying that.
Well, you know how I am about defining words, so we're going to do a little defining of a couple of key words. You mentioned ambrosia, so I looked that up. Ambrosia means the food of the gods. Now, that's pretty sick.
Wow.
Now, parabiosis, that is the anatomical joining of two individuals. And if you go even deeper into the roots of parabiosis, para means alongside of, next to, kind of like I was a paramedic. So I was next to a doctor is the way that you could relate that. But biosis means life. So you're talking about something that is akin to, alongside, or mimicking life, parabiosis. So that's right out of those articles. So what they are doing basically is trying to, ambrosia is putting themselves up as someone who's dispensing the food of the gods. And I would say that that was a little g, not big G. I'm sure that they're screening it for things like hepatitis and certainly for AIDS, HIV, things like that. But they're playing with fire because there's a lot more to blood than simply whether or not it's carrying a biological disease. It's carrying DNA. It's carrying people's DNA. And we know that DNA has memory in it as just one aspect. So they're taking on the memories, historical genetic memories, bloodline memories, literally, into their bodies. So you know what? I think they're playing with fire, and I think that they're going to find out that God's not pleased with what they're doing. And if the sources of the blood are coming from people that are not willingly giving it up, let's say that they're financially destitute, that means they're under duress. They're giving blood under duress. I wouldn't necessarily want to take blood that came from someone who was stressed out during the donation process, because that alters the makeup of that blood. And we kind of talked about that off the air. So that's my first take on it. But these guys are going the wrong way.
No, you're right. And we've done extensive work with the likes of Christopher Everard, who talks about the various blood cults across the ages. And unfortunately, we've got a blood cult around and well right now, and it's this global elite. And we often hint about the shadier kind of rituals that they carry out. And sometimes there's talk of human sacrifice. I don't want to get too negative or kind of depressing tonight, but this all ties into it because, like Tony was saying there, these people may be stressed out when they're giving blood. And the more stress caused, the better when it comes from these creepy elite groups, because that results in adrenalized blood or adrenalized blood, whatever way you want to pronounce it. The blood is full of adrenaline. And it's said that that's exactly what these blood cults are after. It's always something worth bearing in mind. But Johnny, ambrosia, that name in itself, like Tony was saying there, food of the gods, really?
No, Kev, anytime I heard of ambrosia, I thought it was a tin of cold custard.
Yeah, exactly. Creamed rice, Johnny. Exactly. Leave our creamed rice alone. But one other character I want to bring in here, sorry, John, is somebody that we love to hate on here, even more than Elon Musk, and that is Jeff Bezos. Now, he's the founder of Amazon. He's also the owner of the Wall Street Journal as well, or the Wall Street Post. No, is it the Washington Post? That's the one. I got there in the end. But he has also started raising money for one of these companies that's going to reverse the aging process. And in fact, Tony, he actually raised $116 million in funding by October last year. And again, this is all part of this ambrosia, this push for a push for what? For beating aging? We can't beat aging. It's all part of the life process.
All right, my friend. Going back to late 2015, you and I talked about where all the venture capital money was going in Silicon Valley. And this comes right out of the business journals. I don't just pay attention to the science journals. I read the business journals as well. And in late 2015, they were all over the place in all the journals about pouring money into what used to be called the biosector, bioengineering sector. And that evolved into this human longevity movement that you and I started talking about with Dr. Craig Ventnor and the sequencing of DNA and his Institute for Human Longevity in La Jolla, California. That's near Southern California, in Southern California, near LA. The point being here is this is nothing new. The venture capital money going towards defeating death. It is all about the resurrection of the dead. That's part of what parabiosis is. If you go back into the Egyptian rituals, they performed rituals of transfusion, just like they're talking about here. And it was for the purpose of extending the life of the pharaohs. It is also, from the rituals side, the blood is used for the raising of the dead. All right, carry all this over back to CERN. Here we go again. Yeah, Anthony Patch talking about CERN. The purpose of CERN, amongst many, is the opening of the abyss. That means the resurrection of the dead. That is the utilization of the four main detectors of the synchrotron particle accelerator as MRI machines, which also function as 3D bioprinters in the resequencing and regrowing of biological DNA at CERN, using the sequence of ancient DNA that they wish to resurrect, including the head of Osiris, Nimrod, Tower of Babel, connecting the dots, at the north area, the center point of the main ring of the Large Hadron Collider. That is how they will open the doorway, where they will open the doorway, using the collider in the center point of the main ring. And if you know anything about witchcraft, you know that everything occurs and takes places on a ritual standpoint in the center of a ring. Okay? So what they're doing in Silicon Valley is getting ready for what they're going to do at CERN, resurrecting ancient DNA, achieving immortality, the original lie put forth by Satan in the Garden of Eden, that ye shall be as gods. End of story.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to hide it. I love you, Tony. It's like I said to you before the show, you've got such a way of taking what are seemingly random data points and stories, but they're not random at all because there is a connection. And you kind of laughed there about you going back to CERN. And it's like I was saying to you with AI earlier on, myself and Scott discussed this on Friday. It doesn't matter what story you start on. You're only at the very most 6 separations away from artificial intelligence. And places like CERN, it really is at the center of most of the things we face right now. And we've got about 10 minutes left. And I've been saving this, Tony, because I know Johnny, he's going to love this. The audience are going to love this as well. But you sent me an email today about AI. I know the continuity of the show. We've gone AI, we've gone this, we've gone that. We're back to AI now. That's the way KBS rolls, right? And you were saying you got hit by almost a download of information today in the shower, didn't you? And it was all to do with AI and 2001, 2010. Talk to the audience about what you sent me in that email today, Tony, because this is brilliant.
Okay, when we look at HAL 9000, the sentient artificially intelligent computer on board the spacecraft in 2001, most people have thought that it is being influenced, communicating with aliens, an intelligent life form, when in fact what it was being contacted, communicated with by the rectangular black obelisk. The black obelisk is an AI computer. It is a sentient computer that is talking to Hal in that movie. And it is a non-benevolent, it is a malevolent obelisk. The evidence is it influenced Hal, the 9,000 computer on board the spacecraft, to kill all of the crew members except for Dave Bowman, who survives. But Dave Bowman is then uploaded into the AI computer, into the black obelisk, and he is placed in a sentient world simulation, in a holographic simulation, the white room, where you see him laying in bed as an old man, then you see him as a baby, as a fetus, floating at the end of the movie, floating above the earth. That is the new race of beings. The end of the movie is telling you they want to birth a new race of beings, one that has merged with the AI computer, which is the black obelisk. The black obelisk is preventing humans from reaching Jupiter. It wants to kill off the human race. It is malevolent, the AI system in 2001, 2010. And that is what Stanley Kubrick was trying to warn humanity about. The other aspect is it is not Jupiter in the original story by Arthur C. Clarke. It was Saturn. Saturn is the golden age of Kronos. That's what they're trying to bring back in. The replication of the obelisks around the planet Jupiter, when it turned black, in 2010, it was the black spot, and then it surrounded the planet. That is what they want to trigger at Saturn. I've spoken about the black cube inside Saturn that has the 7 leadership spirits, deities that they want to free from their prison by connecting with Birkeland currents from CERN to the southern pole of Saturn. When they crack open the black cube, just like the black obelisk in the movie, they will begin the replication process around Saturn of the black cubes, the black obelisks. They will do the same to Saturn as was depicted in the movie 2010. That is bringing back their golden age of Kronos. Golden age of Kronos is when Saturn, the Earth, and Mars traveled through the cosmos into this solar system. And at that time, it traveled together enveloped in a plasma envelope. That was their golden age of Kronos. Kronos is Saturn. They are trying to recreate the golden age of Kronos because that was a time of immortality of human beings living on Earth in which there was no dark. There was only the sun of Saturn itself. They want to create a new race of beings in this sense of immortality achieved through not only the DNA in the blood, but the computer, the uploading into the computer. This is the whole scenario. Is the golden age of Kronos being reproduced by these people? That is how they intend to achieve immortality. 2001, 2010 was trying to tell us that they're going to do it through AI, which is what the black obelisk was, and it wants to kill off God's creation, human 1.0. Thank you very much.
You see, it did connect, actually. You know, when humans lived longer, that's exactly what they're trying to do with this technology, the likes of Ambrosia, the likes of CRISPR as well. They're trying to prolong their lifespans. Absolutely amazing, Tony. And I hope the audience enjoyed that, because when I was reading that today, I was just blown away by the connections that you were making. And I'm going to have to go and rewatch these movies again. And I've seen somebody in the chat room mentioning Cassini. Now, Cassini's grand finale, as they're calling it, it comes up later this month on September the 15th. And you can check out in the archives or over on YouTube a show that myself, Johnny, and Tony done specifically on the grand finale of Cassini. Now, we don't expect some reignition or the igniting of a second sun in the sky like some people have been suggesting out there. But it's definitely something of interest to keep our eye on from a science point of view, if nothing else. But Tony, again, thank you for connecting those dots there. And Johnny, that's our viewing again, 2001, 2010. Now we can watch them with the patch goggles on, and it's going to make sense, dude.
Oh, I hope so, Kev. I really do hope so. Because these things, I mean, there you had Anthony talking about people merging with machines, merging with AI. Are they going to be human anymore? Will I be able to get my gun out, Kev?
Oh, Johnny, you see, I'm sure your gun's packed away somewhere, right enough.
Hey, 2010, real quick. The end of the movie, they showed the two suns in the sky, right? That's Saturn. That's the reignition of Saturn. I'm not saying Cassini's going to do that, but that is the golden age of Kronos, that they want to reignite Saturn, but it is not going to be done with Cassini. If they do it, okay, first time I'm ever going to say this, Kev, if they do intend to reignite Saturn, creating that plasma envelope around Saturn, it will be done with the Birkeland currents coming from CERN to the southern pole of Saturn.
And of course, if you go back and listen to the show with Anthony, he gives the hard science on why we believe it won't have any effect on the atmosphere around Saturn, anything like that, because they were worried back at the time of the Manhattan Project that they would set our atmosphere on fire, right, Tony? But the atmosphere here, it's far more dense than anything you're going to find up there, and it didn't ignite it here, so there's little to no chance of it up there, right?
Well, Saturn is helium. It's not very dense, so you can't take a nuke. There's not enough plutonium. There's no fusion, no fissile material in great enough quantity to create a nuclear device up there that we know of. Now, do they have an onboard nuke? They might, but I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. I think the more efficient way is to send the double-stranded helix, twisted helix of Birkeland currents, electrical current that they're going to connect to Saturn anyway. That has a greater opportunity for igniting the hydrogen and helium of Saturn. But again, it's a very thin atmosphere. They'd have to start at the core, and the core, which is the black cube, is comprised of metallic hydrogen because it's so cold and dense. If they achieve ignition, it would be at the core igniting metallic hydrogen. That would produce the plasma envelope.
See, Johnny, there you go. Simple as that. He makes it sound so simple, doesn't he?
Exactly. I know.
I love these shows so much from a purely science geeky point of view, Tony. I could listen to you all night long, brother. I really could, because the alternatives would be to listen to Michio Kaku, that other one, Tyson DeGrasse, or we've got Brian Cox over here. And we absolutely know all of these characters that speak about science on the TV, on the mainstream, they are all bought and paid for. And that's why I would rather come to somebody like yourself than over any of them any day of the week. But we're almost out of time, folks. And I hope you've enjoyed this tonight. And if you have enjoyed it, don't worry, because we'll all be back again on Wednesday. Anthony will be back with us on Wednesday night to get further into whatever is happening in the world. And the way myself and Tony share emails, who only knows what topics we'll come up with by then. And of course, like I was saying, tomorrow night we have got our really good friend Ben Emlyn Jones. He is back on the show here. We'll be getting into the mummies, the hunt for Nibiru, and so much more. Check out Tony's work at anthonypatch.com. Wherever you are, make it TFR.
And dinny touch that dial.
God bless you all.
Scotty's daily updates on this, you can find them over at Facebook, and he's also going to be joining us live here on Thursday night as well. And we should have a clearer picture then, Tony, of the actual path that this is taking. But some of the reports that I've heard, and yesterday I think it was Scott's video before this latest update, there was actually fears that this Hurricane Irma might actually hit up into New York on, wait for it, 9/11. You could not make that up. But now, as Scott's showing with this kind of latest map, it looks like Florida's going to take the brunt of this one, Tony. And we still don't know kind of how strong this is going to be by the time it makes landfall.
Yeah, and most of Florida, as you know, is at sea level or just a few feet above. So it won't take much to submerge Florida if this thing hits at a Category 4, Category 5. And a few days ago, there was even some banting about of possibly for the first time in recorded history hitting as high as 6. So we'll see.
And that's exactly what Anne was informing me as well. When I heard a Category 6, I didn't even think anything like that existed. But what I like about Scott's reporting on this, Anthony, and I'm guilty of it a lot, anytime we look at any kind of weather event, I'm the first person to start talking about HARP, geoengineering, that kind of stuff. But Scott, like he rightly does it there, he just takes the kind of raw data and presents it as he sees it. And as of yet, and this is just me personally, and I haven't done any kind of deep research in the level you would go to, Tony, I haven't seen any definitive proof that this has been a HARP attack. Now, that's not to say that it hasn't been involved, but it's also very, very key for the listeners to know we are in hurricane season right now, Tony.
Yeah, definitely we are. And the projections going into 2017 were for 7 significant, that would be 3 and above, 7 significant hurricanes were projected for this year. So HARP or otherwise, even seasonality, if we even have seasons anymore, with all the geoengineering that's going on, I don't think we really have natural cycles anymore. But that was the projection. On my YouTube channel at Anthony Patch, I posted Dane Wigington, our good friend from geoengineeringwatch.org, who's been on the show a couple of times and who will be one of our keynote speakers at our upcoming conference on the 16th and 17th of this month. He put up a video showing the radar images of the atmospheric ionospheric heating from HARP relative to Harvey. So that's the only source that I would consider in my book to be a valid source and discussion on HARP relative to Harvey.
Absolutely, and I haven't actually seen that. I'll need to check out Dane's work on that. But for people out there who do want to follow these things, like I said, Scott Lopez, he's doing a great job just now. Geoengineering Watch, they're always on top of this kind of thing as well. And we have to bear in mind that, and the reason I'm saying I'm kind of making a point out of this, Tony, is because so many people, I even seen it on the post for the show tonight, saying that this is a geoengineered event. And I don't know if we can go quite that far yet. And you know me, I like to go all conspiratorial and out there into the realm of speculation, Tony. But as of yet, I mean, you've seen that little bit of evidence, and it is hurricane season. So I'm going to kind of err on the side of just reporting what's going on, because as we've seen with Hurricane Harvey, if there's one lesson we can take from that, Anthony, and anyone who's living in any kind of area that is affected by weather, surely it must be the need for us to prepare, even just for a couple of days, with being without power, before the government, if they're going to come and help, before they get there, right? We need to have our own kind of survival pack ready.
Yeah, totally agree. I think you and I are taking the sober approach, and I don't mean that flippantly. We're taking the sober approach to the reporting of these storms, and I appreciate, what is being done here to not to get too far into that conspiratorial. It's kind of like Monday. I was on with you last week, and you were trying to pull teeth on me to go into the deep end, and I wouldn't go there. And so now I'm kind of doing that to you. I'm keeping you from, getting too far off the deep end, as well as myself. But I think that what we need to do is let's reiterate some of the things I ranted about relative to what happened in Texas and is still going on in Louisiana. Folks, if you have the opportunity to leave early, I'm not telling you when to evacuate, that's up to you. But if you have the opportunity to hit the road before the roads get jammed up, even if they tell you to shelter in place, it's not a good idea, especially if we're looking at a Category 4, Category 5, and heaven forbid a 6. I mean, 5's bad enough. But pay attention, get on the road, get your family and loved ones out before the roads get jammed up. That may mean leaving a week ahead of time. Take a vacation, okay? This isn't fear-mongering. I'm talking about prudent steps for your survival. Doing DARPA dollars.
DARPA dollars, and we were having a laugh before the show, and DARPA dollars will become more obvious as the show progresses. But Anthony, you've had a wild weekend, and I've been watching these storms that are gathering as well. We've had Hurricane Harvey, Now we've got this Hurricane Irma. Now our good mutual friend, Mr. Scotty Lopez, he has been doing an absolutely amazing job of covering all the storm kind of news. And the reason I say it's amazing is because what Scott's doing is he's sticking to the facts, he's looking at the tracks, he's looking at the data, and he's not giving any of the kind of usual conspiratorial side that I'll add on to things. He's just telling people how it is, telling people to prepare, where it's coming, and what to do, that sort of thing. So to kick tonight's show off, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play Scott's latest video. Now, it's only 5 minutes long, but that'll give me and Anthony a really good starting point where I can get Tony's thoughts on this latest storm, Hurricane Irma, which is heading for the US as we speak. So take a listen to this.
And this is my daily update on Hurricane Irma. We've had a change in the track here that has me a lot more concerned for Florida, and we will get into that here in just a second, but let's kind of see what is currently going on with the storm. It is still a Category 3 hurricane with winds of 120 mile an hour. It is 560 miles east of the Leeward Islands. It is moving west-southwest at 14 mile an hour, and it has a pressure of 944 millibars. Because of this, we now have hurricane warnings for the Leeward Islands. We have hurricane watches for Puerto Rico, the British Virgin Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. If we take a look at the GOES floater imagery here, we can see that the storm looks healthy. There's plenty of convection around the eye. It has been going through eye replacement cycles, and it will continue to strengthen as it heads into warmer water. Here are the sea surface temperatures currently, and as you can see around the Bahamas, we have sea surface temperatures approaching 30 degrees Celsius, so there is plenty of fuel for this storm to work with as it continues to move to the west. We're now going to look at the storm tracks here, and you will see why I am a lot more concerned about Florida. This is the GFS ensemble, and basically each one of those lines is a separate computer simulation. And as you can see, there's a big change from yesterday. We now have the storm possibly maybe even hitting northern Cuba, but it is definitely tracking more towards Florida, and the GFS has been pushing this thing farther west each time it has updated. The official GFS track takes all of these separate computer simulations and basically finds an average between them all, and that is where you get an official GFS track. So if we go to the GFS simulation here, we can push this forward and see that Irma tracks really, really close to Cuba, and then it makes a northern turn and hits southern Florida. So this is a lot more concerning to me, because if you remember the video yesterday, the GFS had Irma right off the coast of Florida and curving up into the Carolinas. Now it appears Florida may be taking the brunt of this. Now, the GFS is showing it emerging back over the water, possibly off the coast of Florida, and we could have a second landfall in Georgia and South Carolina. So, once again, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even North Carolina, you're still not out of this. Even if you don't get the eye of the storm, you are going to get, you're basically on the dirty side of the storm. You're going to get the flooding. You're definitely going to get some wind. You're going to get maybe even some storm surge. And yeah, it looks pretty bad for the southeastern United States. So
now, if you want to keep up to date with
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready for another week of live radio with me, your host, Kev Baker, right here on the Kev Baker Show? What a weekend it has been. We've had North Korea, little Kim, he's been at it again. Hurricane Irma, it is picking up speed as we speak. Lots of AI news as well. And of course, to get into all of this with me tonight is my good friend, and I'm so proud I'm able to say that. He's also a host on the network here as well. Author, researcher, the brilliant Anthony Patch. He is live here with us tonight. You can find his work and his books and details about the upcoming Full Spectrum Dominance Conference over on his website, www.anthonypatch.com. And I want to take this chance before we get going tonight, again, just to remind all of you out there how brilliant you are. And without you lot out there, I mean, it just wouldn't be worth my time or any of the hosts' time turning up to provide and present the information that we do. So never, ever forget just how much myself and Anthony and Johnny Whistles, who'll be with us later, we truly do love all of you out there. And even the people who don't agree with us, you know, that's how we all grow and learn together. You know, before we get going tonight, if you are living in the UK today, what an absolute nightmare. Forget Hurricane Harvey, forget Hurricane Irma, forget the fact we're on the verge of World War III with North Korea, because Kate Middleton, she's only gone and got pregnant again. That's right, a third reptilian royal baby on the way. And, you know, I can talk about this and I can criticise it, right? Because this is going to be the latest royal parasite to be sucking off the teat of the British people. That's right, my tax money, your tax money out there, that will go to giving this child an absolutely amazing life that not one of us will ever get to experience. But that's my royal rant out the way. And yes, my new name for Kate Middleton is Kate Middlefinger. Deal with it. Tony, welcome to the show, man. I've got that little rant off my chest now. I hate the royal family over here, and that's why I'm so glad you're with me tonight, or I could probably see me abusing that horrible reptilian family for 2 hours, and the people don't need to hear that, Tony. How are you doing?
Well, you can do that tomorrow. Tonight, we're